Hello and welcome to this edition of Community Voices Uganda on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. I welcome you all, my panelists and indeed viewers on this conversation. And this being the month of March, we all know we celebrate one, if not the most important thing on earth, that is our women, our mothers, our sisters, and I should start by saying happy Women's Day, Women's Month, and Women's Life. It is very important that we have women on earth, and we really appreciate and celebrate the contribution you make in making sure, one, there is life on this planet, but also making sure there is continuity of that life on this planet. And forever we shall be grateful that you do what you do to make sure we are alive and we get to do what we have to do. I am Phillip Muliisa, and today we are discussing a topic that is actually, well, I'll share my ideas about the same a little later, but we're saying accelerating action for more inclusivity of women in Uganda. And when we talk about inclusivity, we want to talk about all the sectors of life and the country, be it the economics, be it the politics, be it the spiritual, the social, the cultural, every aspect of life. We are looking at how we can better include our ladies reasonably in all these matters of society. And I want us to start here. Look, when I look around this country as an individual, I see a lot of work going on done by ladies. When you look in the leadership, this country has a lot of very powerful, very strong women in leadership, from the level of vice president to the office of the prime minister to some of the most important ministries, to when you go to the judiciary, justices from the level of Supreme Court way down to grade 2 magistrates. Talk about very senior lawyers in the country, talk about spiritual leaders that are ladies, talk about cultural contributions of ladies and many other spaces. And I want us to start there. And I should start with the ladies, because this is your month, this is your time, this is, it's all about you. I'll start with you, Auma. Look, when we talk about celebrating women in the context of Uganda, what are we actually celebrating?
Thank you very much, Phillips, and a good morning to all viewers, and a happy Women's Day to every woman out there. My name is Auma Tamali. I am the Executive Director for Grassroot Defenders Initiative. We are based in Lira. And being a woman, and not just a woman in Uganda, I think, yes, I want to say I know so much about the women in Uganda and what they are living. And coming down to the topic, our topic of today, accelerating action for more inclusivity of women in Uganda. Why this topic? And I want to really thank the people who brainstormed and came up with this theme for the celebration, that somewhere there is a huge gap. Yes, Phillips, you've said that in Uganda, you see women taking up leadership positions. You've seen women in top government offices. But have we bothered to know how many women? Sometimes we shouldn't be blindfolded by just a handful, and then we get so excited. Women are so many in Uganda. I didn't visit the statistics of you both recently, but what I know, women are more than the men in Uganda. Meaning we are supposed to actually take a majority of those positions, but let's just take an example of the number of women members of parliament. You see, we have 146 women representatives, district women representatives, and only, I think, about 19 women who have been voted on direct seats. So
17.
17, yes. What does this imply? We have a parliament of over 500 plus MPs, and women constitute less than 30%. What does that tell you? Are women being included anyway? When it comes to a majority process of decision making, let's say at parliamentary level, that concerns women, do we see ourselves having a hand in that particular session of parliament that is going on, assuming there is a law that is supposed to be passed to protect women? You know, we have been struggling, women have been fighting to take up this space, but you can't take up space when you are the minority. We could be having the prime minister, the speaker of parliament, but have we come down to the majority space? Have we taken a look at the number of councillors? Because a reflection of parliament, or the, parliament reflects what is happening actually on the ground, meaning even in the local council leadership, women probably are the ones still tailing in terms of numbers. It's women. Then when it comes to economic aspects, women are the most poor in our communities. And this has been caused by several factors that hinders a woman. And these factors stem from a cultural perspective. Culture has for long, allow me use this word, belittled women, because we are treated as people who are supposed to be down, submissive, below, because at cultural level, a woman who is empowered is seen as a threat. No woman in the community, when you rise up and there is that woman who makes money, she's rich, and then everybody starts seeing her like a threat. Can that one even be married? Can that one respect her husband? When a woman has a lot of money, she cannot be submissive and all that. Culture has brainwashed the entire society that a woman is supposed to be that person who is seen as a downtrodden, as a downgrade of a human being. When we look at now moving away from culture, we come to let's say the leadership space. I'm just from talking about the leadership space. Is the leadership space prepared, or is it leveled enough for a woman to participate? We have just seen recently. Now, let me use the most recent example of the Kawempe North by-election. When you see those videos and then you're like, which woman can go there? Which woman can really have the guts to just be there knowing that we have children at home? So I am going to be afraid that, okay, I can't join the political space because if I join, what if I get arrested and locked up? Who feeds my children? Who wakes up to nurse my kids? Who takes care of my home and all that? Has government done that, leverage that space for a woman to participate? I think let me just put that as a tip on the iceberg and give space for other people to say something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Auma Tamali from Grassroot Defenders Initiative, and you raised very important things there that we're going to actually talk about in detail a little later, including the politics and, for example, relating to the Kawempe by-election, the violence, the arrests, and so on. We want to see how should it play out actually. Should we now say that violence should be a preserve for the men and the women should be given another space where they have to live freely and there is no such things? But we'll talk about that a little later as we proceed in the conversation. Let me bring in Madam Molly Wambi here. Molly is a women's leader and a business lady. Molly, talk to me. How is the situation like in your environment where you survive and where you do your business? How are women participating in matters of economics in your area?
Come again, Phillip. So it's a question. Phillip,
Yes,
when you
please.
look at women in the informal economy, more especially in market areas, women are not given the same spaces as women, as men. Because when you look at women capital, women are always having less capital than men due to the factor that women have no money, they have no capital, money to purchase the merchandise, and it hinders them to grow our economy. So it gives men the first priority of having much more wealth and having much more capital than women. Because when you look at our side as women, when you want to go for a loan, for example, in Japan, they'll ask you for the land titles. Yet you don't have land titles because you don't possess land, which is not the same thing. So it hinders women in the economic growth, giving us giving women to be behind more than men, because men are always growing their business. Their business are growing up, yet women, their capital is very little. So it doesn't give the same space.
Yes, thank you, Molly, for that. And you raise key issues there. You talk about women lacking access to capital, women not being able to access loans easily because traditionally they do not own land and many things like that. And we really talk about more of that. I want to bring in here Kigezi Women in Development. Madam Florence, I hope you can hear me. You're most welcome and greetings. What is your assessment of the participation of women in Kigezi, most especially based on the work you do in that particular region?
Thank you very much. Thank you for this space, which has enabled me to talk and issue out, talk about issues affecting women participation in Kigezi. I will not talk about only the leadership. If we go to the issues, because participation cuts across, but I will begin with the participation in the politics of Uganda. I will give one example of a female representative who has tried twice to compete for a direct seat in Ndorwa West. She's called Busi. The name. Anyway, I'll get it. Ankunda Gesje. She has tried, but when she was contesting, to my dismay, even the ladies were asking her, "What are you doing? Why are you now aspiring for the male seat?" So even the citizens don't understand that the direct seat is for both female and male. They always think that only women compete for the affirmative action seats. And this is not the correct thing, because the Constitution gives us the right to compete. Only the affirmative action was put in place because women were left behind, far behind. It was put as for equity issues, so that the women can also have where to start from. And then during the course, when they gain the competence and the skills, in Kigezi, even the girls at earlier, they were not accessing education due to patriarchy, society, traditional beliefs and norms. So now that at least women have access to education and they can compete favorably with men, but the society look at them as they are now invading the male seat when they were given their seat. this is not correct. And when we tried to talk, that was in 2016, they said, Florence, don't mislead the people. There is a seat for female and a seat for male. Let her go and compete for someone who's disturbing. Let me first put in private mode. I don't know.
All right, thank you so much. We shall pick you on later when you are settled, but thank you for that submission, and you raised something critical about the affirmative action policy of government, having to have more women in leadership, especially at the level of parliament, and we discuss more of that a little later. Joshua Kingdom is a lawyer, and I want to bring you on, Joshua, here. Talk to us. What is your assessment of the participation of women in matters of leadership, in matters of the economy, in matters of education, and every other aspect of life in our communities? Yes, Kingdom.
Hi, Phil. Thank you very much for having me. So my assessment, well, I think it's mixed, because I think what I also wanted to emphasize is that I really think that there is progress. There is now a lot more involvement into issues of development, as we can see. But I also think that it's really important to realize that there's actually been a lot of progress made in that regard. So, for instance, with the introduction of the women members of parliament seat, I think it has really helped, because while there are existing stereotypes in the culture, as the immediately last speaker was saying, I think that steps like these have helped us to sort of have more women in leadership, more women engaged in the legal sector. As you know, you had said in your introduction, we have women sitting on the Supreme Court, we have women sitting in these other courts, etc., etc. So I really think for me that there is progress. My fear, however, contrary to I think some of the views that we had, rather than saying that it is not enough, my real fear is we might see a reverse of that progress. I think I can speak here in particular in regards to like the young people. There's this whole thing of toxic masculinity that has come up, where men feel like women have made a lot of progress and like they want to fight back. I think that it is really misguided, but because it has a tribal element to it, in that it sets men against women, there are a lot of men that are buying into that sort of idea and they're fighting back. I don't necessarily think that we have seen the full effect of that kind of narrative, but I think the fact that people who sort of push it seem to be gaining popularity. I think that there's fear that is well deserved, that we might have that impact eventually have like a ripple effect in real terms. For instance, I'm going to take issue with someone here, and we can go into the details if you like. But for instance, this whole man cave thing with Andrew Chamagero, I really have issues with that thing. We can get into the details, but I really fear that the fact that it is becoming popular, and even like on the international scene, we have guys like Andrew Tate and that kind of stuff. I feel like we risk reversing the progress that we made. I think also why it's really, really important for us to understand that there's progress is that we can see that there was actually a difference. There's like a difference in the times that we're living in right now and the times that happened before like that progress happened. There was a time, for instance, before we had like that 1.5 points that are given to women at university. And those times were pretty. And I can tell you that, for instance, having just recently graduated from law school, that in our class, and were actually more than men. So I think that there's that sort of progress. So we need to ask ourselves, how has that progress been made? And I don't think that progress like happens in one day, and then like try to accelerate that as we are speaking here. And then also talking about the issue of why I fear that might be lost. I think that if we take progress for granted, while like the people on the other side, as I was trying to argue, are sort of aggrieved and they're trying to organize, I think that we risk sort of losing the whole project and the progress that has been made. So that's what I can say for now.
Thank you so much, Joshua Kingdom, and you raised very important things there that we need to probe as we continue the conversation. I want to come back to you, Tamali. Look, earlier in your conversation, you did talk about the fact that if we have majority women in our community, then certainly they should be the majority in all the sectors that are very active, such as leadership and the economics and so on. But is this a matter of just having a majority of women in these spaces, or we should actually first look at, are they ready? Do they have the required competence and skill to get in these particular positions, so that when they are there, they are not just there because they are women, but rather because they can do the work that has to be done in those spaces? Yes.
Yes, Joshua, that's a nice question. I actually expected it that it would come. But then let us just take the handful that have taken up those roles at this point in time. Let's say in parliament, the judiciary, in the ministries and all that. I think women are performing. I think there are some weaknesses, well, but I think they are performing. But again, going back to maybe their qualification and the rest. Yes, today we have girls going to school, though there is also a question of how many complete the highest level, or even how many complete the lowest level, which is primary 7 in our country. But what I am talking about is being a majority, first of all, tells you the number of people who are unemployed. Probably the majority are the women. And we have talked about several other factors that hinders them from getting empowered. We've talked about several factors. People have mentioned a number of things that hinders women. But again, when we look at there are those privileges, let's say, that government has in terms of appointments. And we usually see ours here in Uganda. There is a lot of power that has been given to the president on appointments. And I would really implore the state to take on such. Yes, I see the president trying, but again, how much is he trying to promote the women, to put the women there? When it comes to appointment of RDCs, how many RDCs in Uganda are women? We have 100.
Auma,
yes.
Auma, if you allow me, look, when we talk about using such spaces to include women, let me give you a very quick example. From the LOC1 committee, you have an automatic woman sit there. When you go to the parish level, there is an automatic woman sit there. When you go to LOC3, there is district. From the side of councillors to the side of MPs, you have women, automatic, affirmative action. Joshua Kingdom here earlier talked about the 1.5 that is given to ladies as they join university. Talk about when you look at our ministries today, I can mention quickly like 3-4 ministries: the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Energy. You have ladies there, very strong ladies. Talk about when you go to the judiciary, we spoke about ladies to the level of the Supreme Court, talk about the DPP, talk about all these officers, the registrars. Just yesterday, the president was swearing in new justices of the High Court. 4 of them and 3 were ladies. How more do you want the president to show the willingness that he is actually including women in the affairs of the country?
Joshua, I didn't refute the fact that the president is trying. But again, we are talking about our numbers vis-a-vis the appointments that are being made. Yes, there is something. The reason why our topic is accelerating means there is something already going on, but then we have to step up. We have to step up the game. Going back to the statistics of parliament, Joshua, I want us to look deeper, critically into that statistics alone. 17 women went on direct seats. Yes, I know this is politics where they are supposed to campaign and get those positions. Then the affirmative action has put 146 women. Now add on to add the 17 to 146. That brings us to 180.
About 60. About 163, 64.
Yes. Now 160 in a parliament of 500 plus. What's the percentage there? 30%. Meaning,
But you see, Auma, when you keep referring to that example, the argument will be that these seats are actually open for these ladies to compete, and they choose not to compete there.
That's where I am going to. Have we bothered, or as the state or relevant stakeholders bothered to find out why are the women not coming up to contest against the men in these directly elected seats? Why? Someone mentioned their poverty. First of all, we all know that development starts from ownership of property, and this property must be land. Women don't own land. Personally, the land I own is the one I bought, but my brothers own land that they inherited. See where culture has already put my brothers ahead of me. So I have to struggle. So it means that if we were put on the same line and said we are giving you 10 years to reach that point, it means my brother, of course, will get there before me, because I have to struggle to get everything on my own. But someone out there, culture has given them a privilege of inheritance. Then two, we are also looking at our education system. Does it favor the girl to complete? Because now, when we're looking at someone contesting for a parliamentary seat, here they are demanding for an advanced level certificate of education. Advanced level. How many women, how many girls reach senior 6? Because the number of dropouts from P7, the number of girls that sit P7, like the statistics show that boys are more. Meaning that a girl has been knocked out due to several factors. Could be poverty, could be cultural mindset that the society says that, okay, what's the use of a woman going to school? We still have these communities, even where I come from. You find that a girl probably has reached P5, P6 there, and then a boy is promoted more, that this one can go ahead. But you see a girl, at some point someone will come and marry her and then settle her somewhere. So they tend to promote the boy. There are several challenges that hinders a girl from reaching there. That's why some of us advocates are saying that do more to even promote the few that are there. Do more to promote them, because we are fighting a lot. We are getting lots of punches from every corner. I gave an example of the terrain of the politics. I would be so much willing to participate in the politics of this country, but then I have to look at several other factors. How is the terrain? Is it leverage for me, a woman, to participate? No, it is not. So I am not going to participate in politics, not because probably I don't have money or I don't have the qualification, but I also have one challenge that government is imposing on me forcefully, that the terrain is not favoring a woman. And this is just not the problem. Yes?
Yeah, just a quick one, if you allow me, as you conclude on this. Look, when you talk about, for example, the terrain, there is a famous saying recently that says, what a man can do, a woman can do better. And if the men are braving that rough terrain today, and we are talking about a generation where we say women are actually the same as men, and we are equal, and actually they can even perform better than the men, then why not the women braving this rough terrain enough to come and challenge? If they have to be on the street, be there with the men. If they have to go, you talk about the education system, the same education system you talk about that challenges the girls is the same system that the boys go through. And I should share with you that in the last 4 years, Ministry of Education is telling us that we are having more girls at all levels of education, from senior 4 to senior 6 to university. We have more ladies getting to those levels than men. So maybe actually it should be the boys now making a bit of noise. What do you think?
Joshua, I want to disagree
But
with you.
just just
entirely.
for correction, I am Philip. I am Philip, not Joshua. Joshua is the other one.
I mean, yeah, Phillips, I want to partially disagree with you somewhere there that, yes, we say that what a man can do, a woman can do better. But there are several challenges that we as women, we go through. I want to use myself as an example. Because that one, I own it. I went through a C-section last year. I went through a cesarean section last year.
So sorry about that.
Several other women are going through this, like on a daily basis, giving birth, childbirth, and some also like due to sicknesses and the rest. Then another burden that a woman bears is the burden of being an housewife and a mother. That alone puts us on a weaker level. It puts us already on a weaker level. Those two examples. So you find that, yes, I am still crying that some spaces are not leveled for a woman, because a woman is trying to bear a lot of burden on her chest. But then this is the same woman who is supposed to compete outside there for the space with men. I have never heard and will never hear of a man who has gone through a C-section to give birth to a child. But we have women who have gone through 4 or even 5 C-section birth. So this alone, you will never heal and come back to the normal you. Or it may take a lot of time for you to recover from such. So let us understand that even when we are talking about this, let us not only look at the small things about like the small challenges. Let's dive deeper into the challenges that a woman goes through. Then you talked about the number of ladies completing secondary school, like more than the boys, sort of, yes. But have we also bothered to find out, after they complete this secondary school, how many of them are employed? I have so many of the people who completed school with, but when you look at the statistics, you'll find that majority are housewives. Believe me, majority are housewives, and probably employed in these minor businesses at home. But all the gents that we studied with, they're probably in some office somewhere. So let us not only look at the number that are in school. The number that are employed also matters, because now this is where the empowerment comes from. When they are able to fend a living for themselves, when they are able to support their children, but if a woman has been put there, and we are only basing on the statistics, the number of people who graduated from Makerere, the girls were more than that, how many are being employed? Then the heads of ministries, there are so many heads of ministries, fine, that are women. But what about the undersecretaries? What about the staff that are in those offices? If you look deeper into it, you will find that the majority, or even 80% of the employment in those ministries are the men, not the women.
Thank you so much, Uma, for that submission, and it's a really powerful one. Molly, I want you to read it, to talk to us about this. One of the things you talked about was how difficult it is for women to access capital, or if they wanted a loan, how difficult that is. How do you think women in that kind of situation can be assisted to have this kind of access in terms of capital, in terms of loans, and so that they can thrive in their communities? Yes, Molly.
Thank you, Philip. As I said earlier, that women cannot access money in the bank due to the fact that they have no land title, ability to the bank. So my request is, could the government at least give these women some relief funds, because these women always have their cooperatives, and it would be better for the government to at least give them some money through their cooperatives and get money on a low interest rate. Because when they go to the bank, they are requested for mortgages, they are requested for the land titles, because they don't have, when they give them money through their cooperative, there would be no collateral, because they know each other and they know the capability of each other, and this one will manage to pay his money. The moment that person will get so much money, they can limit that person. So what I think, it would be better for the government to give them money through their cooperative or groups, because these people have groups. And when I go back to my fellow woman, Auma, she says that these women cannot own land. I had a visit to my fellow women in Arua. These mobile women crying that due to the cultural norms, women do not own land. Even though your father gives you land, it's owned by your elder brother. Your brother, for you don't own land, though you are given to you. So these cultural norms also make us to still grow our economy. Because land, when you're requested for the land title, and your brother has the land title, you will not be able to give you the land title to go for a loan in the bank. So we can be suffering. Then another thing, what I would love to see for the women to grow their businesses, to grow the economy, it would be better for the government at least provide the necessities or the for instance, when you look at a woman, she does a lot of work, she has a lot of burden. When she wakes up early in the morning, she has a lot of work to do in the morning while she's at home. Afterwards, she goes for work, she starts to work the paid work. Earlier, before she did the unpaid care work. So now she's going for work, which earns money. She will perform, but she will earn little because she is already tired. So what I think, the government should do two things. She reduce on the burdens of women. Because you see, when the woman wants to take water, she goes for water for a long distance. Let the government bring near the water, this woman to do her work. Then
Yes,
afterwards,
thank you, Molly. And just one of the things you've mentioned there is that women have groups, and government has put out a series of programs. I know you've heard of EMIOGA, Parish Development Model, and many others. And usually there is a percentage for women. Have women in these groups tried to access some of these resources in these programs so that they can be assisted in terms of getting money to go about their businesses and indeed growing themselves?
some of our women have tried, more so they applied for the US money, but women were made to walk through the desert. I don't know what's wrong with this money. Money is there, and they always say that money is there. But the moment you go for the money, the percentage of women getting that money is less. And when we look at it was Grow Money. Have you ever heard of that Grow project?
Yes.
Came as a facilitation to the women in the informal economy. But the moment women went to the bank, because that money was put in bank, when women tried to go for the bank, they were also requested for the land title, the card for their motor code. So these women wouldn't afford to get that money. So I don't know what's wrong with the money. People are given money and people do not access the money. They give them restrictions which hinders them to access that money.
Thank you, Molly, for that. And it's very important to talk about those things. I want to come back to you, Florence. And when we spoke, you talked about the fact that, for example, at parliamentary level, ladies are quite challenged usually to try and stay in their lane of contesting for the seat created for them under affirmative action. And I want to ask, recently there have been voices in parliament that maybe this program should be scrapped such that women get to fully get involved in the different levels and the direct seats of parliament, and they don't have to be told that you have a special seat yourselves, you got focus there. Do you think it's about time we reevaluate and maybe scrap that affirmative action, or it's actually something that should continue surviving in our country? Yes, Florence.
Thank you, Philip, for that question. I feel it's not yet time to scrap off the affirmative action. One talk about like gender equality and gender equity. We are still very, 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 very far in terms of reaching where the men are. Because if you look at the number of women who are getting through on direct seat, they are still very, very few. And the issues that challenge them are still here with us. The environment for women contesting is still very low. Earlier, I talked about the cultural norms and beliefs that really hinder women to participate favorably. Those are the barriers that are prohibiting women from contesting and participating favorably with men at the same level. And when we talk about equity, it is about fairness. This affirmative action was put in place as an equity measure so that the women can also have a starting point to compete with men, but because they are not yet there, as I mentioned, that the environment is not favorable, there is these cultural norms and beliefs, they really put a woman at the second class level, whereby a woman have to seek for permission even when they are soliciting for votes. It is open 24/7 for men to solicit for votes, but it is really challenging for a woman. If you come late, like past 8, they will ask you, so where have you been? And the home cores for women, sometimes the woman will think about the children as quickly as possible and withdraw from the campaigning trend to go and care for the family. And even women, for example, in Kigezi, a woman, because of the bride price, you are like owned like an asset, because they will say, we paid for dowry. We brought you from your home. You belong to all of us. In fact, when it is campaigning period, there are some people who will say, you have let this woman to be free. She will just misbehave. When it is a man coming late, they say a man has been in business. But when it is a woman coming late because you were traversing for votes, they will say, those campaign agents, they are encroaching on the what. So many issues are just thrown on women when they really come late because they are traversing for votes. And look here, if you don't have you don't make an independent decision, it means you first ask for permission. And this is also in Uganda. I don't know if you have realized that politics have been monetized. Look at a woman who doesn't have land, doesn't have prominent assets. What do you say? If you feel that you need to inject much money in your campaign, so you will find a woman is challenged in terms of economic ventures to inject in the campaign. In fact, they were there to lose miserably because men have their money. They inject in the money. They campaign 24/7 when a woman has to withdraw and come back. In fact, if you have a powerful male agent, they will just throw all sorts of things. You think they are ending at campaigning? Do you think they are just he's just a campaign manager, or he's repressing you in the conjugal rights? So women still have a lot to go through.
So Florence, look,
yes,
when you talk about all these challenges,
yes,
we also know that we have ladies that have been able to go through them, and there are very many across, when you look across the country in the business sector. When you look at some of these very big companies, you have female CEOs. When you look at, we talked about those that made it to parliament, we have the ministers. What have they done differently to make sure they beat this competition and the challenges you talk about to get the levels to where they are?
Now, what is now the percentage of the women who have joined parliament on direct seat? You get the 17 out of the constituency we have in Uganda. It means many women have failed. But the percentage is still very small. I want to say
but we
that.
want to look at, we want to
Yes.
look at what have the 17 done to make sure they succeed, so that we motivate those that have failed and those that have not tried yet to do what these ones have done and be able to get to that level.
Okay, I may say there are some supportive families who have done away with the traditional norms and beliefs. They believe that that woman, if she goes there, she can do something. But that percentage is still very small because of the level of the patriarchy. We have to break those barriers and make sure that you convince the family that when you go there, you will contribute to the family, you will sit on the decision-making table and make some decisions to benefit the country. But the number is still very small, and the rigidity of the community to drop those cultural and social norms is a hard rock to crack.
Thank you so much, Florence, for that. Joshua, look, and I know earlier you talked about toxic masculinity, and you talked about the fight back and how we're going to lose track of the progress that has been made. And I know you even mentioned Man Cave Yugi, and it's really very popular recently, and people are giving a lot of attention. In the wake of women getting to fight for their space and getting empowered and having to dominate most of these spaces, how should men and boys respond to this, and peacefully making sure there is no collision in society between the men and the women, but also making sure they don't lose their position that they believe belongs to them? Yes, Kingdom.
All right, thanks. I just wanted to, before I get to that, to do some responses from the earlier conversation. I really think that perspective here is very, very important. The outlook that we take on these issues ultimately determines the results that we'll get. And I think that for me, this is where I take a bit of issue regarding some of the views that we've heard. So it is true that there are still very few women members of parliament standing on the male's ticket. And it is true that they go through a lot when they're campaigning, etc., etc. But I really think that we also have to acknowledge the fact that there were times where people would look at what we have now and sort of admire it. So we sort of need to understand where we're at first before we sort of make progress. So to just make a quick comparison with the US, which I think that people might think, or at least I personally think that it is a developed country and probably we admire it and all that stuff. I've just made a quick check and I realized that in 2018, so US has two sort of legislative houses. So in one of them, they had 19% women, 22% Senate. 22%. In another, they had 22% representation. So it does appear to me that the problem that we're looking at here is not necessarily one that is just Ugandan. And this doesn't mean, of course, that it is a good thing, because I think a few years back, the last time I checked, I think it was like probably 5 years, Rwanda had majority of its people in parliament being women. So of course we have to strive towards that. But I think we also have to ask these particular questions. And why is this important, for instance? I think that we wouldn't, if we are going to be realistic, wouldn't expect that we're going to come from like maybe zero representation of women in parliament and all of a sudden we have 50, we have 60. I think that it is important to understand that there's progress made. I think that once we appreciate this, then for instance, we get to a place where we are able to ask questions like this. For instance, we passed a policy like women having a particular faction of services that is just going to be women. We need to ask ourselves questions like, was this, for instance, the right approach? What if this made women more comfortable, knowing that because I have a seat as a woman, I don't have to sort of go and fight with the men. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that is like the correct thing, but we need to go back and see like the policies that we had and gauge them gauge them against what we thought were going to be the results and ask how far have those policies like gone, and are they still going to deliver on the objectives that we set them out for? Also, the second thing can be there's certain policies that are going to just be stretched and like they do their bit, and like if we continue pursuing that particular kind of path, then there will be no progress because we might be blinded to some of the avenues. For instance, there's a question that has come up around women campaigning, and when they're campaigning, they face negative backlash, etc., etc. I think that this is a very good example of like awareness. I think that when you look at women progress in terms of our laws, I think that our laws are very, very progressive. Yes, there are some things that have to be changed, but there's actually a lot that has been achieved in terms of laws. So maybe we're not doing more in terms of awareness and ensuring that we don't just have good laws in books, but that actually people realize and know what is happening on the ground. I think that it is only when we are able to ask these particular questions that will actually achieve more and more progress. But when we continue beating a dead horse, I think we're going to risk just keeping in a stagnant position and just continue to sort of raise concerns which are legitimate, but being pursued in a way that is not the right one. So now, the question of what can men do? So I think that I don't know about this whole thing of men cave and everything. Of course, you're always going to have these problems when you have like tribal, and then they are women. You're likely going to have these scenarios of people being tribalistic because tribalism is going to reduce rationality. And so when people are not rational, they just want to cocoon with their own groups, they're usually going to be more likely not to be rational and just do what pleases the entire group. And you don't just see this in men and women battles. You see this in battles between like states, like if people are saying Ugandans are supposed to do this and then Rwandans are supposed to do the other thing. Again, you're likely to see these scenarios when we're talking about tribes like Baganda like this and then Manyakwara like this. People are likely to conduct themselves in this particular way. So I think, first of all, we need to recognize the fact that whenever we have these tribal settings, it is sort of having like a fuel, a matchbox that you light on fuel, and it is very likely to have these particular sentiments. So I think, first of all, that the people that are trying to approach this particular question in a tribalistic sense are really not doing us any justice. But also the second thing, I think they're really taking advantage of people that I don't want to say naive, but are searching for meaning, let's say, searching for meaning in life. So these guys are there. Of course, as young people, if you're a young person and you're growing, there's anxiety around you, you're wondering when are you going to get a job, you're finishing school and all those things. It is a very easy scenario for you to be taken advantage of. But I really think that if a person is already a substance and they have their money and they know that they can get everything that they need, I don't think they're likely to sort of be taken advantage of. So I would think that the right way to go around this is to actually encourage people, whether men or women, sort of try to pursue things that are meaningful in life. I think that in that regard, they would be less likely to be taken advantage of. But also I think the other thing can be actually what we're doing here, basically having conversations, yeah? So people might have their opinions in one way or the other way. I think that when we come out in public and try to sort of argue these particular notions, I think we can be able to clarify who is wrong and who is not wrong. I think in the end, when you look at the women's movement, and this is where I really usually encourage my colleagues to do their homework and etc. It's not like women are trying to get into men's spaces. There's very good justification as to why women should be considered in a particular way because they have been disadvantaged in terms of history. When you get back just around 1950, you realize that women, even in the US, even like in those Western countries, could not vote. Like that's not even 100 years back. So I think that we need to sort of correct for that, and men need to sort of realize that. I really think that there's no threat in that regard, but because of the reasons that I've pointed out, it can be really deadly. And as we see, people are actually taking advantage of. But I also think that in trying to approach these men that are being taken advantage of, or like that are buying into these particular opinions, we really need to also be very considerate. I don't think we need to just bash them as ignorant and selfish and all those things. I think we need to sort of try to understand where they're coming from and like approach them genuinely and show them that we're actually not against them, and try to correct for where they've gone wrong. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Kingdom. We are still on Community Voices Uganda and Civic Space TV, and we're discussing accelerating women's participation in matters Uganda or sectors of the country. And colleagues, we have about 10 minutes to be out of here. I'll give 2 minutes to each of you to really give me a way forward, a recommendation on what you think can really be done to make sure our women, our mothers, our sisters are actually fully involved and engaged and positively contributing to their community, to their country, to their continent, and to the world. Because in the end, without them, certainly life will cease to exist in the long run. So I'll start with you, Auma. How do we move forward peacefully, but also making sure women get to do what they have to do in our societies? In about 2 minutes.
So much, Philip. A quick one, the government. Support women's economic ideas. You see, we have seen the OWEP, the Myoga, we have seen the PDM. I think it's about time we also dive deeper into the effectiveness of this kind of financial support that is given, because for the first time anyway, I've seen government, the state, okay, the president do some follow up, but from the time the WAVE programs came in, I think there were no follow-ups, but also there is giving and then not following up on what this money is being done with, because some of the money that was given in the WAVE programs were actually taken away by men. So we need to also, government needs to take up the responsibility of following up this if we must promote women's economic empowerment. Then also, there are those gender-specific needs. We are talking here of sanitary pads because girls need this, and this is one of the reasons we are having school dropout, period poverty. Girls are dropping out of school because they can't afford sanitary pads. Can we remove taxes on sanitary pads, or even come up with a budget that sanitary pads are got in school? If condoms can be given for free, why not sanitary pads? It's a necessity, and government can do it. I know government can do it, and we are still continuing to advocate that they do it. implore the effectiveness of the laws that protect women. We have the GBV laws, but how effective are they being implemented? How effective is it? Men are beating women, men are breaking women, and then the next thing, the man has been released on bond. He's supposed to continue reporting, and then nothing happens later. Government has to check into that. Then to our cultural leaders, really, the laws on inheritance of property, we have suffered enough. Cultural leaders should come up with a policy that gives at least the ladies also part of inheritance. Then include women in decision-making processes, even at cultural levels. These things of, like in my culture, the Lao culture, there is no woman who can be the head of the clan. Meaning, women are supposed to be decided for. They do not have space up there. Then cultivating the mindset of the society. It all started from culture, that today the society looks at a woman as, Florence called them a second citizen, maybe a second human being. Yes, God created us after the man, but that does not make us less important. My voice matters. And if
Thank
I
you.
do not,
As you conclude, please.
yeah, as I conclude, yes, we can make more progress if stakeholders accept to tackle these challenges that hinders women. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much, and happy Women's Day to you, Auma Tamali. Wambi Molly, your final remarks.
Thank you, Phillip. My final remark, it's an appeal to the government. Let the government give women financial support in their group or cooperative, whatever, so that they can have enough capital. Because you see, when you look at the informal sector, the percentage of women in the informal sector is more than that of men. So we need financial support from the government. Thank you so much, Phillip.
Thank you so much, Molly, for that. And Florence, how do we move forward?
Thank you for another chance. I have some bullets on call to action, or I would say, I want to talk about that the government and policymakers should strengthen the implementation and enforcement of gender-responsive laws and policies, ensuring that women's rights are upheld in all sectors. And then they also should invest in programs and invest meaningfully that promote women's leadership, economic empowerment, and protection from gender-based violence. Then the private sector and financial institutions should increase support for women entrepreneurs through accessible financial services, mentorship, and market linkages. They should also commit to gender equal hiring, equal pay, and workplace policies that support women's career growth. Then the civil society and community leaders should champion gender equality initiatives by raising awareness, challenging harmful norms, and advocating for women's rights. Strengthen grassroots movement that empower women at the local level. Then education institutions and the tech industry should promote girls' education, particularly in STEM fields, and expand digital literacy programs. They should ensure equal access to technology and eliminate barriers that keep women and girls from participating in innovative and leadership. Then men and boys as allies support and advocate for women's rights at home, in the workplace, in schools, and in leadership spaces. Challenge gender biases and create inclusive environments where women and girls can thrive. Then international organizations and donors, I don't know if this will work in this era, where the donor the funding is dwindling, but it should be increased for funding for women's empowerment programs and gender-responsive climate action. Support initiatives that enhance women's participation in governance, economic development, and social justice. Then women and girls, please speak up, take leadership roles, and support each other in pushing for equality. Leverage available resources, networks, and opportunities to build skills, grow businesses, and demand change. Happy Women's Day, and thank you for this space.
Thank you, Florence. And lastly, Joshua Kingdom.
Yeah, so my recommendation is simple. I think that people usually overlook how much they can do. So for me, my appeal is to the individuals. I think it really starts with you. Ask yourself, what are you doing to try to sort of advance the women movements, the women movement. I'll give you a quick scenario, for instance. Personally, at home, I've for quite a while decided that I'll be washing clothes. Yeah, usually when we're raised up, the women engaged in activities back at home, and then like for us we did things like grazing, gold digging, stuff like that. So I've taken initiative that I'll also help with the utensils. So I think that anything, however small, it really starts with you. Because if you total up those initiatives, then they add up to something that is really big in the end. Otherwise, thank you, Phil, for having me. And I look forward to doing this soon again.
Thank you so much, Joshua Kingdom, and very important and powerful choosing to engage in those. We have what people tend to call gender roles. It's a women's job to wash clothes and utensils. I think that is very important that you've chosen to take on, and please keep going. And this should motivate more boys and men to get engaged in such activity in their homes and indeed in the communities. Joshua Kingdom is a lawyer, and I appreciate your thoughts and your time on the conversation today. Florence Tumuheirwe, I appreciate your time and your thoughts on the conversation today. Florence is the ED Kigezi Women in Development. We appreciate you so much for joining us and for giving us your thoughts today. Wambi Molly is a leader, a businesswoman, and we appreciate a mother. We appreciate you so much for joining the conversation today, and thank you so much for your thoughts. Very well, welcome. And lastly, Auma Tamali, she is the ED at Grassroot Defenders Initiative. We appreciate your time and your thoughts to the conversation today. You add a lot, and we know that such conversations will keep changing the mindset and how communities run, but also at the decision-making table, these ideas keep getting picked up and certainly things keep changing slowly but surely. Special thanks to the technical team and special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for making sure this is possible, but also all our other partners on this program and all other programs on Civic Space TV. We appreciate you for the contribution you make to make sure these voices keep going out there and they are received by our people, our leaders, and all the people of the world. From us, we say thank you so much, and we shall see you next time.